Ancient India gave us one of the most fascinating ideas in marriage history, Swayamvara, a ceremony where a woman, usually a princess in the stories that survive, could supposedly choose her own husband, which sounds remarkably generous for the ancient world, until you look at how some of these marriages actually worked. Because sometimes her father selected the men who could compete. Sometimes status decided who was even considered suitable. Sometimes the bride's future depended on whether a man could complete an almost impossible physical challenge. And in one famous case, the father appears to have had a preferred groom before the competition even started. So yes, the woman could choose, just after everyone else had done a surprising amount of choosing first. And that is where Swayamvara becomes much stranger than the romantic version most of us know. Take Draupadi. Her Swayamvara in the Mahabharata is remembered as this grand gathering of kings and warriors competing for one extraordinary woman. But Draupadi's father, King Drupada, already wanted Arjuna as a possible husband for her. He arranged an extremely difficult archery challenge, and the text tells us he had Arjuna in mind while preparing it, which creates a slightly awkward question. If your father chooses the competition, sets the qualification, invites the candidates, and quietly hopes one particular man wins, how much of the final decision is really yours? And Draupadi was not the only Swayamvara bride whose choice came with conditions. Sita's famous marriage story gives us another version. Damayanti gives us almost the opposite. And once you put these women beside each other, something becomes clear. Swayamvara was not one simple system where ancient Indian women freely picked whichever man they liked. The amount of choice could vary dramatically. Sometimes the woman had a clear personal preference. Sometimes the family had enormous influence. Sometimes the contest itself practically selected the groom. And because these stories mostly involve princesses, kings, and warrior elites, there was another complication. Marriage wasn't only personal. It could affect family prestige, political relationships, succession, and status. So being a Swayamvara bride might sound glamorous, until you realize that your personal decision could be happening in front of an entire royal court full of people who had very personal opinions about whom you should choose. Which is why the real question is not, did Swayamvara let women choose their husbands? The better question is, how much choice did the bride actually have after family, status, politics, and competition had already narrowed the field? And that is exactly why being a Swayamvara bride could seriously suck. Let's start properly with Draupadi. Her Swayamvara in the Mahabharata was spectacular. Kings and princes assembled. There was an enormous bow. There was an extremely difficult target. And the man who could perform the required feat would win Draupadi's hand, which immediately creates a tiny problem with the word choice. Because Draupadi wasn't simply walking around the hall thinking, no, definitely no, maybe, nice hair, no. A qualification test had entered the marriage process. And this wasn't some harmless wedding game. The challenge was deliberately difficult enough to separate extraordinary warriors from everybody else. Now comes the detail that makes the whole ceremony much more interesting. Draupadi's father, King Drupada, already wanted Arjuna as a possible husband for her. According to the Mahabharata, Drupada had Arjuna in mind when the difficult bow was prepared. So the father of the bride creates the contest, while hoping that one particular kind of contestant and possibly one particular man will be able to win it. That is less. My daughter may choose anyone she wants. And slightly more. My daughter may choose from the outcome of this completely neutral examination that I have designed very, very carefully. Parents have apparently understood strategic matchmaking for a long time. And this is where being a Swayamvara bride starts becoming complicated. Draupadi is clearly important. Her marriage matters. Her presence at the ceremony matters. But she is standing inside a system that other people have already helped construct. Her father controls the event. Social status shapes who belongs in that royal gathering. Warrior ability becomes a marriage qualification, and the result carries consequences far beyond whether two people happen to like each other. There is also another uncomfortable part of doing all this publicly: rejection. Rejecting somebody privately is awkward enough. Now reject a king or warrior in front of his relatives, rivals, supporters, and half the political elite. Enjoy the wedding snacks after that. And this is one of the things modern retellings can flatten. We hear the woman chose her husband and mentally translate that into something like modern individual freedom. But royal marriage did not exist in a vacuum. A princess belonged to a dynasty. Her husband could become an ally. Her marriage could strengthen political relationships. It could affect inheritance, status, and prestige. So the bride's personal future and the family's public future could become the same decision, which means your wedding day is also somehow a geopolitical meeting. No pressure. Now look at Sita. Her marriage to Rama is often casually described today as a Swayamvara. And again, it seems to fit the pattern. A princess, powerful suitors, a legendary beau, a challenge, a victorious hero. But if we're asking specifically how much the bride herself chooses, Sita's story becomes awkward. King Janaka establishes the conditions surrounding her marriage. A man capable of accomplishing the extraordinary feat with the bow proves himself worthy. Rama succeeds, and Sita marries Rama. Notice what is not happening. Sita is not presented as examining all the candidates and saying, "I choose him." The condition is doing a lot of the choosing. In fact, Janaka's account includes something even more dramatic. Earlier kings who failed to obtain Sita became furious enough that conflict followed and Janaka's city was threatened. Which means being at the center of an elite marriage contest could have consequences far beyond one disappointed man going home in a bad mood. Imagine hearing, "Unfortunately, the other candidates didn't take the result well." How badly? They brought an army. Fantastic. So Sita gives us another version of the same problem. The bride may be the prize at the center of the ceremony, but the structure around her determines who succeeds. Which is why simply saying, "Sita chose Rama in a Swayamvara," can make the story sound much more personally elective than the narrative actually is. Now, at this point, we could make the opposite mistake. We could say, fine, Swayamvara was all theater. Women didn't really choose. Except then Damayanti walks into the story and ruins that neat conclusion too. And honestly, good for her. Damayanti's story in the Mahabharata gives us something much closer to a bride with an unmistakable personal preference. Before the ceremony, Damayanti has already heard about King Nala. Nala has heard about her. An attachment develops between them. Then things become unnecessarily complicated because several gods also want Damayanti, which is the kind of romantic competition most people would consider excessive. Nala even becomes involved in carrying a message connected with the divine suitors. But Damayanti remains clear about whom she wants: Nala. Now imagine the pressure in that situation. You are being offered candidates whose status is literally divine. And you're still saying, "No, thank you. I want that man." At the Swayamvara itself, the divine competitors complicate matters further by appearing in forms resembling Nala. So Damayanti has to identify the real Nala among them. And she does. She chooses him. That is very different from the Sita story, and noticeably different from Draupadi's contest. Here, the woman's preference exists before the public ceremony. She maintains that preference despite pressure, and her decision drives the result. which gives us perhaps the most important point in this whole story. Swayamvara did not represent one fixed amount of female choice. Different literary stories give us different levels of agency. Draupadi stands inside a carefully engineered royal competition. Sita's marriage is heavily shaped by a condition created by her father. Damayanti arrives with a clear preference and sticks to it. Same broad idea, very different experiences. And then there is another complication that almost never gets mentioned in simplified versions. Ancient Indian texts discuss multiple ways marriages could be formed. The Manusmriti, for example, famously describes 8 forms of marriage. And Swayamvara is not simply listed there as one neat 9th category called Woman Selects Husband from Royal Buffet. Among the recognized forms is Gandharva marriage, associated with the mutual desire or agreement of a man and woman. That matters because it reminds us that partner choice in ancient Indian traditions cannot be reduced to Swayamvara alone. Families could arrange marriages. Different texts valued different forms differently. Couples could have preferences. Social status mattered. Kinship mattered. Custom mattered. And there's one final thing worth remembering. Ancient texts often tell us what elite authors believed, prescribed, or considered important, not necessarily what every ordinary person actually did. India was enormous. Customs varied across regions and communities, and real marriages were probably far messier than any neat list in a text. So, Swayamvara was never one simple system where women either had complete freedom or no freedom at all. Sita, Draupadi, and Damayanti alone show us very different versions of choice, shaped by family, status, politics, competition, custom, and sometimes personal preference. And maybe that is the most accurate way to look at it. The bride could have a voice, but how loud that voice was depended heavily on the world around her.